Hey, look who it is. We back at it, baby.
That's right.
Episode I don't know anymore. We just doing this thing. Welcome back to Streaming File, guys. I'm Ben. That's John. John, what you got to say for the people, man?
DJ, drop that intro.
Welcome to Streamophile, the show where John and Ben watch the latest on all streaming platforms and let you know whether to stream it or skip it. We stream everything, so you don't have to.
Guys, like I said, we back at it again. It's been a minute. You know what I mean? We have family come in and out of town. So we had to put a pause on the podcast. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, but it's the holiday season. So we'll try to keep coming at you guys as much as possible. On this episode, we're talking about a movie on Netflix called In the Shadow of the Moon. I came across it uh, through like a movie recap thing on YouTube.
I
John
told you about it.
allegedly told me about it months ago. I don't believe him, but he tells me to check the WhatsApp. John, how did you come across this movie?
Like everyone else does, it came up on my algorithm on Netflix. Now, I did tell you about it. I told you about it months ago. To be fair, though, when I tell you about a movie out, I usually will have watched it already, and that
Yep.
wasn't the case. I I don't know if you've ever done this, but I'll uh, I'll watch the 90-second trailer that plays on Netflix. If
Yep.
you just let it right, and sometimes I stopped doing this. This was a COVID bad habit. I think I did this. I don't know how many nights, but my wife would get so mad at me because I would tell her, "Let's go watch something," and next thing you know, I've seen like 18 just previews because I go, not
Mhm.
next. And then
Yep.
90
Yep.
seconds go by and I watch the next one. She's like, all right, we saw the previews. I'm like, all right, good night, baby. I love you. And so it came up in my algorithm. It kept popping up because of the type of movies and shows that I watched. And I did tell you about it on WhatsApp. When we get off the show, I'll definitely look it up and find the proof. But when I told
Yep.
you about it, I hadn't seen it. I had seen the trailer so many times and read
You felt
the
like you saw
plot
it.
on Wikipedia that I was like,
Yeah.
look, I read the plot on Wikipedia, and we already had the conversation about reading the plot on Wikipedia. If you read the plot
Right.
on Wikipedia, it's like watching the movie because it tells you
Yep.
everything. And I was like,
Everything.
yeah, I gotta watch this. And
Yep.
I told you about it then. It took you months to come around to watch it. You actually saw it
Hmm.
before I did. And then you're like, yo,
Yep.
John, check out this movie, In the Shadow of the Moon. It's crazy. It's about this guy, this cop, and there's a serial killer on the loose.
Yep. That
And
comes back every nine
then she comes
years.
back 10 years later. She hasn't aged,
Yep.
but he's aged, and it's like a time travel slash serial killer thriller. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I was like, okay, the movie I told you about. I guess it was good. Let me check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was. It's one of those like we saw the trailer. I was like, and I showed the trailer for to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about this movie?" I was like, "Yeah, it looks good." And then I was like, as we're watching, I was like, "Okay, this movie's good. Okay, this movie's okay. All right." Before we get into the whole breakdown, but like there's just like YouTube channels that break down movies in like 20 minutes or less. They give you the entire movie. It's almost like the cliff notes of movies. So if there's ever like a book report you have to do or whatever for a movie or a movie report for a class, just find movie recaps or anything in that, and it'll completely break it down. I was like, oh, I don't want this movie spoiled in 20 minutes. I want to watch this actual movie. And yeah, look, I'll give you credit. You probably did tell me about it because we do talk a lot about movies and things to watch on online and stuff like that. So I'll give you that credit post haste or whatever the fuck. But um, I just feel like doing. I know I said that wrong, and
Hey,
I'm just gonna roll with it. I,
okay.
let's just roll with it, John. Just roll with it.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
don't
yeah.
don't argue. Don't debate it. Every word and phrase is made up and used wrong all the time. But
Post
yeah, man.
haste.
Look, this. All right, so I think we should get to the before we go into the spoiler talk because it's very difficult to talk about this movie without doing spoilers because of how it breaks down and what it is, right? Because very quickly it tells you very quickly it goes into spoiler alerts. Like it's not long into the movie that goes, oh, this is a spoiler. Oh, this is a spoiler. Oh, this is a spoiler. Oh, this is a clue. So before we get into that, let's do the ranking. Stream it, skip it, Wild Wild West it. John, you first.
Let's go with Stream It. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a good watch. I
Hmm.
think if you go online and look at the just like everything, every other movie, if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes, there's some mixed reviews,
Yep.
but the fan reviews are mostly positive, and then the critic reviews are the ones that are You know, again, I'm not a big fan of movie critics. I think they're
No.
failed artists, actors,
Yes.
and they think they decide they're the ones that make a movie or an actor or whatever a career. So I never put a lot of weight on what. Obviously, I've watched Wild Wild West like 4 times, so I obviously don't put
Right.
a lot of weight on what movie
Yes.
critics have
It's
to
very
say.
true. Very true.
Uh, but definitely, you should definitely put a lot of weight in my recommendation and stream this movie, regardless of my affinity for Wild Wild West.
Yeah, we're see we're not failed artists or actors because we've never tried. We've always been fans, so the perspective is different. Like
Right,
I said it in many podcasts, like we're never gonna bash a movie outright. We'll probably make fun of a movie that was ridiculous and silly, but it's never gonna be like, oh, it's just because for us it's gonna be a lack of understanding of what the director or the actor was going for in a certain scene that just didn't make sense, which we've
right.
seen in a bunch of different movies. This movie to me is also a stream. It has again, man. Look, our Boyd Holbrook, he's in this. I feel like the man doesn't make a bad movie. He probably does, just haven't seen it yet. Vengeance, boss of a movie,
That's
hilarious
right.
in that. And in this one, he's a tortured act. He's a tortured detective, and it's so crazy because he's the only one living this reality. So everybody else has moved on with their life, and he sticks with it. All right, guys. That before I get into it too much, and we break it down a little bit more in depth. We're going to spoiler talk. In three, spoiler talk. Two, spoiler talk. One. How quickly did you figure out the twist of this movie? I like jumping right into the spoilers. Like, I don't like this little Easter egg, this little thing. How quickly did you figure it out? Did you think it was well laid out, the plan of how they came up with the twist? Because the twist happens pretty quickly, right? Because like it jumps forward in time. But how quickly did you figure out? Oh, this is that person, and this is that. You know what I mean?
Probably when they make that first jump, right? When they
Yep.
move forward 10 years, 9 years, and you see that this person comes back and they haven't aged one bit.
Yep.
Where you see the obvious signs of aging for Boyd Holbrook's character and his partner and everyone else. And by the way, I didn't really get into the cast, and I'm not going to name all the names, but obviously Boyd Holbrook, Rhea, who's
Oh,
the other main character who keeps coming back,
mm-hmm.
played by Cleopatra Coleman, and Michael C. Hall, which is uh, he plays Holt.
Bam.
He's
Yeah.
Boyd
But
Holbrook
don't.
plays Lockhart, who's the
Yeah.
torture detective. He's the classic detective that like has a cold case that he just can't let go of, and Holt plays his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law who happens to be an asshole. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, everyone knows Michael C. Hall. If you don't,
Dexter.
Dexter,
Yep.
among other things, but Dexter is his big one, most recent one. And so yeah, those are the three main actors in the movie. But yeah, I think I figured it out when she comes back the first time, and I didn't know quite how, uh, but I knew okay, well, he's not crazy. Other people are. It's not something that he's crazy or imagine these things. Sort of the sixth sense. No one else sees her. No one else
Right.
sees what's going on. But I didn't know if it was like what it was. If it was time travel, which I thought, okay, this is like a time travel kind of thing. It didn't have that feeling at first.
It did not.
Obviously,
No.
I read the Wikipedia plot, so I knew what it
Right.
was. But watching it, I was like, it doesn't have a time travel feel. It's just like it looks like a gritty sort of detective
Mm-hmm.
story,
Yeah.
and
I
which
think it's
it
a really
is.
well. I think it's a really well told time travel movie because a lot of the times you don't get that perspective, right? Like you get the perspective of the time traveler, right? You don't get the perspective of the people who live through that time.
Right.
So I like that. I think that was a really smart and witty way to go about that. So I appreciated that. I didn't. So I didn't know. I still appreciated that. I didn't know it was gonna be like his. Again, spoiler alert. All this is spoiler. I didn't know it was gonna be his granddaughter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like they allude to the boyfriend. They don't show the boyfriend till much, much later, briefly. I was like, oh, but you don't think about it because you go, okay, whatever. Then he goes, and then they have that conversation on the beach. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's such a well laid out plot, and a really for any critic who doesn't like this movie just hates themselves because I thought it was really well done because they give you enough Easter eggs and breadcrumbs to be like, okay, something's going on here, like how they briefly show the physicist, right? And they show him briefly in the first jump, but he's so busy because he's a beat cop trying to figure it out
Right.
and that whole thing. Like it was really well laid out, and I just I appreciate a story that you don't quickly figure out. Like they're connected somehow because the way she looks at him, you know what I mean, in the
Hmm.
first jump. But I appreciate that like you don't get the full breakdown. I'm like, oh, okay, that's clearly his granddaughter. You know what I mean? Like you get that slowly. Like, oh, shit. Okay,
Right.
I see what you're doing now. I see what you're doing, you sons of bitches. All right, let's see what you did here. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, you see, there's a connection, right? Because even in the scene, and again, spoiler alert, that when she's quote unquote killed,
Yeah.
and so this entire thing is essentially he's traveling forward in time while she's traveling backward in time because she's coming
Yep.
back to prevent an
Almost
event
like
that in the
a
future,
terror event. Terror.
right, to
Yeah.
prevent
Terrorism.
the, yeah, to remove the seeds, the beginnings of a movement that 40 years down the line, the movie starts in
Hmm.
1988. And so she dies because she jumps in front of this train, or during the fight scene or whatever.
Yeah.
But during these exchanges, that she's not trying to hurt
Nope.
these she hurt him, Lockhart, or his partner. She's not trying to hurt them. Now, obviously, she does kill some people. They're after her because she
Yep.
she killed two or three people in the opening scene, in different locations. They were injected with some kind of isotope,
Hmm.
and you find out during the movie that this isotope is the, and again, we're completely spoiling the shit out of it. So
Shit
if
out of this
you
movie. Yeah.
don't want, we
That's
already told you to stream it. If you want to hear, if you're like me and you want to know what the movie's about and you want to read the Wikipedia plot
and
and
if
you
you
want to go and watch it
it
anyway, keep
yeah, and if
listening.
you want to come back and tell us we're wrong and how we broke it down, we're cool with that too. We're not.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like this is all entertainment and engagement, so we're with it. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so she is, she's not trying to hurt them. You see that. So you know that there's some kind of connection. You don't know what it is, but you feel it in their exchanges, you feel it in their conversation. And the physicist, again, you threw that out there, the physicist comes out, they kind
Yep.
of, they look at him and they write him off as some kind of quack, even though
Quack.
they see him
I
they
feel,
see him a
I feel
second
like
time.
post haste and quack
Post
were
haste
were
I corrected
just
myself though. I was trying to use the right
uh,
word, and I did
cancels
use the
each
right
other
word.
out.
Okay.
I
I
definitely
don't think
use
so.
post haste incorrectly. One
Absolutely.
hundred percent.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I know what post haste means. You absolutely did.
Yeah.
That's why I
Yeah.
corrected you post haste.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. I know. I know. But let's keep it going. Go ahead.
but
The physicist. The
the
physicist.
physicist, right? They write him off. Then he comes back again, and eventually they realize that maybe there's something to what he's trying to say. But yeah, the entire movie is him, like we all are, moving forward in time while she's moving backwards. And the entire plot is that she's trying to come back to the origin of this this terrorist group that started in 1988. There was
Yep.
someone that laid the foundation, the seeds, and they in 2020s, they a bomb goes off and starts this entire civil war, and so they're trying to prevent that from happening. And then there's that entire question that
Such a good
you
movie.
as a person might battle with, right? Like, is that even something you should do? Going back in time would that really make a difference? I don't. They don't
Yeah.
really address it in the movie. That's just something that, like, they
Yeah.
usually do
Because
in time travel movies, or
yes.
address it.
Yes. Yes.
But in my
Yes.
mind, I'm like, is that, like how you're messing with time like that? Would that really affect it? Would that just branch off? And now I'm watching another show, The Peripheral on Amazon Prime. Same
Yeah.
thing. It's a time travel thing, and you're like, you're messing with time. Like, aren't you just creating alternate, um,
Yeah.
just
You use
realities?
you're yeah you're when and that's what they've done in like other time travel movies, right? Like they go back and like and make this like the butterfly effect is a perfect example
Right.
of that time travel shit. Like you go back and like all these other branches can break off and
Hmm.
become different versions of a reality that could have happened that didn't happen but could happen now. That's
Exactly.
why I appreciated this movie so much. It was like it was the time. I guess the time was traveling and the time was happening, but for Lockhart, Boyd's character, right? So he if that interaction never happens at the first in the first scenes with his future granddaughter. He never gets obsessed over it because we skipped the whole thing. Like his wife died that
Right.
same day,
Well.
so he then has to raise his daughter. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Again, spoiler alert. Sorry, we're just breaking the fuck down of this movie. This is what we're doing.
That's too many
So
f
if that never,
bombs.
yeah, if that didn't happen, I think we're at two. I think we're good. I think three is like when you go, oh my god, that's too much. But what? So that's why he becomes obsessed with this whole thing, to the detriment of his career, his livelihood. Where you see him, what, the third iteration of when she comes back, he no longer is a cop. Like, he's a private investigator that's solely obsessed on who this person is that is gonna come back again. And
Using
then
that term
that's when,
loosely as a private investigator.
yeah, he's just like a creep, right? Like, he's just a guy that does stuff that's clearly not legal in any way whatsoever by any mention of a law. But he follows this stuff, and then he comes across the terror organization that nobody was even tracking or had an
Hmm.
idea about, and that's very briefly kind of alluded to in the first scenes, right, with the books, like, because
Yeah.
that's how the terror stuff got out. It's
Hmm.
such a I think it's a really well done movie, man. I don't think this gets credit for how good it was. It was really entertaining, man. I really enjoyed it. And again, we're gonna continue to break it down, but just how those little things happened, and then how the physicist hides for like decades, where they don't know where he is, but he's working for this organization that's keeping him hidden. Where is he? All this stuff, like, all there's no character that's forgotten. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's explained through the years, and it's the first movie that I can think of, and you could correct me if you've seen it. That again, like, and I'll say it again, that like tells the time travel story through the people who lived in while the time traveler was coming back and forth. I thought that was dope.
Yeah, yeah, it did. It tells it differently, right? Like I said, it doesn't really it almost discards the possibilities of anything. Oh, like it tells a really straightforward time travel story. Like I said, other movies tackle the, well, if you do this, like the butterfly
Hmm.
effect, it'll create this or that. And so if I go and read it, I'm sure critics and scientists or pseudoscientists will talk about, well, it's not a realistic explanation of time travel, because if you're doing all this, there's all sorts of other effects that it could have on the
Yeah.
timeline, and so it doesn't tell it uh, from that point of view, from that lens. But
Oh, the lens, the lens.
I'm not gonna drop it.
Never drop
But
it. It's
yeah,
a good. It's a good.
again,
It's a good callback.
you get to see the, yeah, you get to see those people living it, like, as time goes on, and this character through every iteration, she's coming back 9 years, every 9 years. You see how their lives are changing, and he goes from being a beat cop to making detective
Hmm.
to potentially whatever his brother-in-law becomes, right? The captain, and
No,
eventually
police
chief.
chief.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
eventually chief when he retires, to being the conspiracy theorists that
Yes.
they end up chasing, and that he ends
Yeah.
up, that they're the ones that in the future end up uh causing this terror attack. Now he's not part of that group, but he just ends up looking like one of them, living in his car, overgrown beard, hair all over the
Yeah.
place. He looks like he's
Balding.
hasn't
Yeah.
bathed in a week. And
Yeah.
so you see that transformation happen, from this guy who has everything going for him, and of course he loses his wife, and then he gets obsessed with this case, with the time travel aspect of it, and it's like society kicks him to the curb,
Yeah. Because
and
he's a
he's the
crazy
only one
person.
solving it.
Like,
Yeah,
i-
yeah,
if you hear somebody, and also after he loses his partner in the second
right.
jump, if you hear somebody go like, "Oh, I think she's from the future," oh, this guy's crazy. Like, immediately, that's the first reaction. Just bomb. Nah, I'm not taking any of that. We're done here. And then you just see the deterioration of him as a person, as a, I guess, quote unquote, functioning member of society, because he
Yep.
is on this track to be. He's a B cop, then a detective. Could eventually make sergeant, captain, go follow right in his brother-in-law's footsteps, but becomes obsessed with this, loses track of his daughter, doesn't really, you know what I mean? Like, because that second iteration, or the third iteration, she's living with the police chief, and that's
Yep.
who she calls dad. So like it becomes very muddled, but it's like it's understandable because while she's been jumping back, he's solely been obsessed on this one case. That's all he's cared about. He doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't. This the night
Yep.
he met her, he lost his wife and never got better from that moment. It just then the next time in 9 years, she kills his granddaughter kills his partner by accident because they struggled over a shotgun,
Hmm.
and it was a whole thing. It was just it's also like a commentary of like how somebody deals with trauma, right? And depression because he clearly is not mentally stable. You know, he's a person who needs help but just never sought it out for whatever reason. So that's another breakdown of that too, which is possibly if that's not his granddaughter and he's not the one on the subway that day, right? Like it doesn't he never has that interaction with somebody else. His reality is totally different. He's then there for his wife. She might make it and it becomes a totally different conversation.
Right.
So
And
it
even
could
if he's
also
not,
be
he's there for his daughter as she's growing up.
exactly because he deals with it different because he's like, I just saw this person die in front of me, and then my wife dies, and now I gotta be a father. Like if he's just there, like dealing with the trauma of losing his wife, maybe he's a better father and is more and more of a present father because you can see in the second jump, he's no longer a present father. She's like 9 years old. She sleeps at the police station. He doesn't really like feed her. Forgets that
Yeah.
she's even there. So that's a communication or interaction of that time travel stuff because that's a different branch. That's a different reality for him than what would have been.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the mental health aspect of it because I was thinking the same thing. It's not just how someone deals with trauma, but how society sort of deals with people because
Hmm.
his partner and the people around him they reach out but they don't really reach out for help, and you know
No.
that old saying of, well, I'll help people that want to help themselves, or I'm
Yeah.
not going to help someone that doesn't want to help themselves,
Hmm.
but people that are dealing with trauma. And obviously he's lucid, he knows he's not crazy, but I mean he is out on a tangent following
Yeah.
this thing, this
Yeah.
lead that eventually he proves, it proves to be right, but it
But there's
costs
nobody
him
there.
everything.
Everything.
And there's
Everything.
no one there. There's no one there to
Mm-hmm.
be like, they're like, "Ah, okay, I kind of help you," but he gets discarded. Like, okay, whatever, just go follow your little theory, and
Hmm.
just we'll move on with our lives.
Just be that crazy person pushing a cart down the road.
Right.
Just don't intervene or intersect with my reality and me trying to get my shit taken care of. Just go ahead and keep pushing your cart with plastic bags down the road and get out of my way and sleep in your car. Be
Pretty
that.
much
Like
it.
don't you know what I mean? Like that's pretty much it. And it's also a commentary on that. Like yeah, it's so it's such a well like and it does that subtly, right? Like it doesn't have to be over like so like heavy handed where like, oh look, he's mentally ill. Like they just saw a scene where like he wakes up in his car, clearly has not taken like you said, had not taken a bath or a shower in weeks at that point. That's the next time they show him and he's balding, completely unkempt, has like all clothes that looks like they're dirty from Goodwill. That he was
Yep.
like, you know what I mean, like jumping in the just to get clothes on, sleeps in his car because it's the same car from the beginning scenes, but it's not kept up anymore. You see it
Right.
clean in the beginning, like shining, and it's an older 1980s like Buick or some shit. And now it's as he's deteriorated, the car is deteriorated. It's such a good movie, man.
Yeah, it
It's
is. I
such a
thought
good
so.
movie.
I enjoyed it. And what's crazy is that the person that finally starts to come around is his partner, because I don't know if it's the second iteration or the third when
Yep.
he gets
Second,
shot.
because he yeah, the second is when he dies.
So 9 years later,
Yeah.
he
To the
he's
day.
he
To the
fought with
day.
her. Yeah, he fought with
Yeah.
her, and or he's seen her, and then he comes back, and she's, you would think he'd realize that she's the same age, but
Yep.
um, there's, you don't see that story. He gets shot, so whatever support he would have had,
That's gone.
it's out the window. It's gone.
Yeah, and also, how did he survive getting thrown out of an airplane? Are we gonna talk about had that conversation, or are we just gonna act like landing in water at 1,000 feet doesn't kill him? We're just gonna
Just
act.
land on
Oh,
your
it's
feet.
Boyd Holbrook.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. No, that water is not soft at 900 feet. He's 100% dead. Because then the plane crashes and she's dead, but it didn't matter because she's coming back in 9 years to get the job done. Like
Right.
it was so good because they didn't just make it a time travel story. They gave it, because you don't find out about the cult right in the first iteration or even the second. You find out about it in the third, and they're like,
Hmm.
oh shit, like that's why she's coming back. So to that point, you're like, he has to catch this killer. Like you're thinking it's that, and it's this
Right.
totally other thing because they briefly show the terror event at the beginning, and you don't
Hmm.
really know what happened. So it's so good. It's such a good movie. And I've watched this movie weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago now, and I still remember it vividly. Like where I'm like, oh no, yeah, this was a good movie. This was a really solid movie. 100%. 100%.
100%.
You got anything else, JV?
No, man, I think we spoiled the hell out of it. Stream
We
it when you
broke
get
this
a
down.
chance.
Yeah, man. If you're still listening and you're gonna stream it, definitely give this movie a chance, man. It's a really good movie, really well done, and it touches on a lot of different subjects that you don't think is gonna touch on. And it's also it last thing, it also felt like eerily modern, like till today, because of like all the like things being mentioned in different social medias and different perspectives and like different quote unquote politics. You know what I mean? We're like, it's like, wait a second, this movie was probably filmed in like 2017. If it came out in 2019, what are we doing? Like, what are we
You think
doing here?
about Pizzagate and then lately
Yeah,
Proud Boys and all that
yeah,
stuff that goes on. That's not to say there's nothing on the other side of the aisle. I'm just saying like those are
right,
the ones that come to mind where
yes,
like there are just these
like,
very
if,
far out ideologies and
yeah,
people that have made up their mind. So
very much so. Like, we lost this country. This country isn't what it was.
which is
Like,
what the story that's what the story being told
yeah,
is, right? That's this group. They think they lost their
yeah.
country and they're trying to regain it back.
Yeah, like this whole manifesto, and it's like, huh? I didn't like. It's one of those things where like, but it didn't. What I appreciated about that is like it didn't feel thrown in because they gave her reason to coming back a purpose, because it
Right.
wasn't just to like, because you think at that point you're like, oh, she's coming back to kill people. That's all right, cool. Then
Yeah.
this detective has to stop her, and he's the only one that sees it. But it was like, nah, man, she's coming back for this reason. She's doing good in that. I'm like, oh shit, okay, nice twist. I salute the twist. I see you. All right, guys, we got nothing else. This has been Stream File. For John, I'm Ben. We're out. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Streamophile. Directed by John. Executive producer Ben and John. Created by Ben and John. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.